Mary Lacy is well known for her murals around town, like this hummingbird at American Flatbread and the silos at dealer.com. Most recently, she's been working with mosaics. Today, we are going to make our very own mosaic in the shape of a heart to give to people we love. The kit that you received will have a 5x5 piece of wood, small ceramic tiles, and grout and mortar powder. You'll also need these additional items from your house. I suggest hitting pause now, going to grab these things, and then we'll get going.
Hi. So this little art project will arrive to you something like this. There's a piece of wood that will be the back, and then there should be 2 plastic cups, and then 3 Ziploc bags, and 1 Ziploc bag is your grout, 1 Ziploc bag is your mortar or thin set, and 1 Ziploc bag will have your tile pieces. And then you'll need to have some water in a tub like this, or I guess it could be just running water in your sink or hose too. Some paper towels and something to stir your mortar and grout with. And if you have like a palette knife thing, that's awesome. But if you don't, you can find some things like around the house or a stick. And if it's a nice day out, it's a great thing to do outside. I'm using this little piece of plywood as my makeshift table. And if you're inside, just like a sheet of newspaper or something on a table, it won't take up too much space. So, okay, the first thing is to design the heart. And when you open the bag of tiles, just dump it out like this. Don't stuff your hand in. Okay, so after you've put your heart together, and you might not use all of your pieces, like I didn't use all of them there. The next thing you're gonna do is mix your mortar. And your mortar is what will glue the pieces to the board. The grout goes in between the lines afterwards, you'll see. So just start with your mortar and take 1 of your cups. And don't pour in your whole bag of mortar in case you need more of the powder later. So only start about half, or a little more than half is fine. And what I like to do is just like kind of grab what I don't want to exit the bag and then pour out what I do. So you can see. Not too much in there. It's a small project. And then you'll want to just add a little bit of water to start. One mistake that I've made so many times myself is adding too much water, and then you have to add so much powder to make up for it. So, and you know, you could run out of powder. So be very cautious with your water. And honestly, just like, you could just like, if you drop a little bit in there. And the consistency we're looking for is like smooth peanut butter, not chunky peanut butter. And you just start stirring it up, and I can see that it's it's still quite powdery, so I can just add a little bit more water.
Now I'm in the thing.
And we're not there yet, so I add a little bit more water. And you can, we need to mix a lot, but you can see we're headed towards peanut butter now. So it doesn't like drip, you know what I mean? It stays on your knife. That's like peanut butter. If you were to have added too much water and it drips off of your stirring device, that's what this extra powder is for. So that's why you don't want to put all of the powder in initially, in case you need to add more. And you want to stir it for about, I would say, 2 minutes. You're looking for it to be very consistent. You don't want any chunks. Okay. So now we're going to, one by one, we're going to tile down each piece.
Yeah.
One thing that I like to do at this point before I start tiling them down is to take a picture of how it looks right now, because sometimes things can move around a little bit as you're in this process, and a photo is helpful for you to refer to as you know, perfect the tile pieces. So I'll just keep that photo on the side if I need it. And now you just take a little bit of your thin set at a time and put it on the back. You really only need a little bit, not much. And put it down and press it in. And you're gonna see a little bit of the thin set squeeze out, but you don't want too much thin set squeezing out. If there's too much thin set squeezing out, that means you've likely put too much on the back of your piece. Okay, so if this is an example, these last few have a little too much mortar where it squirted out like that. So if it does that, you can just scrape it up off around the edge. It's most important if it is on the outside, the circumference. Good to just double check that you've done each one. It's easy to skip over one. Okay, I think I'm good. So now that you've adhered all of the pieces to your wood, you have to let it dry overnight. So we'll just put that one aside, and voila, 24 hours later. I made this yesterday, so this one's all good to go. And the first thing you want to do is take one of your paper towels and there's, like, if you can see, I had all these kind of fingerprints on the top with the mortar. That's okay to leave drying overnight. You can wipe them off in the morning. What I do is like put like my fingernail behind the paper towel and just get them. I find it better to clean those off the next day, because if you're wiping like this when the mortar is still wet underneath, the whole tile will move quite a bit. But when it's dried, you can kind of scrape a little harder. Okay, so now we're going to grout the inside of like all the cracks between all the pieces. And it's a similar process to the mortar. Where you'll pour about half of the bag into your cup. And then you'll add water little by little. I'm gonna clean off my mixing thingamajig. You'll add water little by little. Careful not to put too much water at once. But if you do, you have extra grout. And again, you'll look for a little bit, just like a little bit more, a little bit thinner than your peanut butter mixture with the mortar, but not far from it. Add a little bit more water. And this is pretty good consistency. So it's a little wetter than your mortar mixture, but still not dripping off your palette. Okay. So I tend to just use my hands for this part. If you want to use your knife or gloves, feel free to do that. I'm dressed appropriately to get messy. So I just put a little bit on my fingers like this and go right over everything. It's gonna feel like you're ruining it in a way because you're putting all this on top of everything you just made, but you'll wipe it away. And I'm putting a little bit around the edges as well, so that the, for example, right here, that's not like a super straight line, and it's totally fine, it's not super straight, but a little bit of grout right there will kind of help create a more of an outline for the heart. And you just want to make sure you're getting it, you know, push it down in all the cracks. Okay, so now we're just gonna let it sit for a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Okay, so once you can see it starting to dry a little bit, you can get your paper towel wet. You can also use a sponge in this moment, if you have one, not your, like, those sponge you use for your dishes, perhaps. But if you do that, be careful that you wring it out plenty, because wood doesn't like getting too wet. So if it's not dripping or anything, just start to wipe away the grout that was on top of the tiles. And this is gonna take a few iterations. You're gonna have to do it once and then wait a little bit and do it again. And once you can see all the edges of the tile pieces again, that there's no grout kind of going on top of one, you can let that sit to dry again, and we'll go back and wipe it down on the top. Okay, another wipe down session. Okay, after you've wiped it down a lot of times, so that when it dries, it stays clean, you can wipe around the wood a little bit to get the grout off of the wood. This is the second time I've done that. And you can leave it just with the wood if you want. If you want to leave this outside, the wood will be exposed to the elements and could start to, weather after a year or so. If you want, and I'm gonna do right now, this is optional, you can paint the outside. You could use markers too if you wanted. So this paint is exterior house paint, so it can like help protect the wood, so it can be left outside. And I will paint the front, the back, and the edges so it is all sealed in, and then that way it'll last a little longer outside. Okay, so after you, well, the painting is optional, but after you paint it or you don't paint it, you are finished. And I encourage you to, this is a project that I started as a thank you to my neighbors because they really helped me out during this time. And I encourage you to give them as gifts and thank yous to someone who might need it right now, need a little love, or as a thank you to someone who could be helping you out. Yeah.